Hello students, and welcome to another video. I'm your teacher, Mr. Flynn, and today we're going to be working on Unit 1, Ecosystems, and we're going to be focusing on Level 1, Ecosystem Relationships. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to watch this video describing the relationship between an ant and a tree, and it talks about a special type of relationship called a symbiotic relationship. And we're going to learn about those on the second day of learning, but this is to just get us introduced. We're introducing the idea of relationships that exist between organisms. Now, the common ones that you're probably familiar with are like deer and wolves, like predatory relationships, right? Those are the ones that many people are familiar with or come to mind when they think about ecology, but there's other types of relationships that exist, and this is just to kind of pique your interest. So after watching the video, describe the relationship between them and talk about it and write it down right here below, okay? So go watch this video. It's on the Learning Resources. After this, I'd like you to work on the textbook reading, and I'd like you to work all the way down until you hit tolerance, okay? This will be day 1. Okay, day 1 stuff will be these vocab words for today, and then the rest of these vocab words will be for day 2. Okay, so pause the video, go watch this phenomenon, and go read about and define the words ecology, biosphere, biotic, abiotic factors, limiting factors, and tolerance. Okay, you will understand these words as we go through the notes down below. Okay. All right, so let's go through the notes and let's talk about this. As we go through, I'd like you to pause the video and fill in the notes as we go. Okay, so for this first portion right here on notes, we're going to look at the biosphere. So pause the video and fill out this section. Okay. All right. So the region of Earth that living organisms occupy. Now you're a living person. You're down here. I'll make it red like you're standing out. Here's you. You exist, and there's different spheres in which you interact with, and these spheres help sustain life. Okay, now you are part of the biosphere. You are made of living matter, and so are these trees. All right, you are a living thing, and you are considered part of what we call the biosphere. So if we were to look at you as a person, compared to these other places, we would label you as part of the biosphere, because bio means living and sphere means like world. Okay, like a round or a spherical object. Okay, all right. Now you interact with each of these spheres every day. Actually, probably all the time, I would say. All right, you're breathing in oxygen, right, from the atmosphere, and you're releasing that carbon dioxide, and then your trees take that carbon dioxide and make sugars, and then they make their leaves, and they build their tree out of the carbon dioxide that you're breathing out. You're having this interaction with this tree here, and you're doing it through the atmosphere, because this is where your gases are, and the atmosphere is mostly made up of oxygen and nitrogen, and we write it as N2 and O2 because these atoms of oxygen and nitrogen exist in pairs in the atmosphere. So you'll see it often as O2 and N2, but this is just oxygen and nitrogen. Okay? You interact with the hydrosphere. This includes rivers, lakes, oceans, all right, because you need water to live. Water is the basis, the main fluid that all of your cells are made out of, and you're passing things and basically your whole body is sustained by water, right? And so you also interact with water because you like to go fishing, right? You get food from the oceans, all right? And these oceans provide all kinds of resources for you. And so does the geosphere. The geosphere, down deep within the earth, we have coal, we have oil, all right? We use that for energy. We also have minerals inside the earth. We have like salt and other electrolytes that you need for your nervous system. So all of these spheres work to sustain life. Now, and there's a fine balance with this, and that's why when scientists are looking for life on other planets, they're looking at their geosphere. They're looking at the hydrosphere, the atmosphere, and saying, do they have the basic characteristics to support life? All right, to support you in this tree here. All right, now life may look different in other places, but the idea is that you need a supporting cast of these different spheres of Earth. Now, when we think about a space of the living area of Earth, it doesn't go very deep beyond the crust, right? The mantle, there's nothing living there. So we wouldn't call that the biosphere. The biosphere is only the deep parts of the ocean all the way up to like the heights of the atmosphere, right? That would be considered like our biosphere. All right, anything beyond that in space, it's too difficult of a place to live. There's not enough oxygen for us to breathe. The temperatures are too hot and too cold, depending on where you are. If you're in the shade of the Earth, it's very cold in space, and if you're in the sun, you're being bombarded with radiation. Echo, turn off the timer. All right, so you just got to be mindful of where you are. When you recognize what the biosphere represents. It's that thin film that goes around the entire Earth. Okay? All right, so go ahead and pause the video again and go ahead and write out the notes for abiotic and biotic factors. All right, so now that you've written this out, what you've done is you've drawn out the green and blue sections of this picture, and the blue portions of the picture represent abiotic factors. Let me just grab my blue here. The abiotic factors. The biotic factors are green in this picture, okay? Everything that is living in this picture is considered biotic, okay? And everything that's not living is abiotic. So this waterfall, the mist at the bottom of the waterfall, the rocks, the mountains, the clouds in the background, and the atmosphere, that's all non-living. Okay, but does it influence the living things? Oh, yes, it does. If we didn't have water, our fish wouldn't be there. If we didn't have grass to eat, the bunnies wouldn't exist. Or, sorry, that's a biotic factor. So the grass influences the rabbits. Now, I would say the atmosphere where the bird is flying, right? That's the gases in the atmosphere are giving enough lift for our bird to fly in, right? Now, the factors of living and non-living things influence each other, and that's basically what this image is about, is recognizing that there's living and non-living things, and they influence each other, and if any of them go out of balance, then we're going to have disruptions to ecosystems. Okay, so this relationship between living and non-living things is critical to sustaining life. And down below we have, I'll change my color here, right? We have plants, we have animals, we have decomposers. These are all living things, right? They are biotic, right? And they influence each other. And then the abiotic factors, A meaning against, so against living, right? So we have air, water, temperature, sunlight, nutrients, rainfall, rocks. These are all things that are in the environment that influence living things, okay? All right, so just recognize the difference between living and non-living and how they influence each other. And this is large ranging, okay? All right. Go ahead and pause the video again, and I'd like you to draw in this range of tolerance. So start coloring it in, drawing it, spending some time looking at it. So as we talk about it, you'll start to see what you were coloring in, okay? All right, so we're going to be looking at trout for this example. Let me go back. I have some images here. Oh, here's another image of the spheres, right? The hydrosphere actually in this picture extends into the atmosphere because there is water vapor in the air, right? The biosphere goes down to the bottoms of the ocean all the way up into the atmosphere, to these upper parts, but not the entire atmosphere because there is a point to where there's not enough oxygen there to sustain life. And then the geosphere extends deep within the earth, okay? Now, the trout that we're going to be looking at are these guys right here. We have these steelhead trout, and that's what we're going to be examining. So we're taking a species and we're putting it under a microscope and thinking, how do we describe its population size based on factors that may influence its size? So, for example, the factor that we're looking at is the environmental factor, okay, of temperature. We can write temperature down here, temp. All right, so we have 9 degrees all the way to 25. So this chart represents the number of individuals that tells you how many there are present based on the temperature. So at low temperatures, the population size is 0. And at high temperatures, it's 0. But if you have this middle zone where it's comfortable for the trout to live, we're going to see higher numbers of them. So like you could go to a river, and if it's reading 9 degrees C, you're probably not going to find any trout. And if it's anywhere between 13 to 20 degrees C, you're probably going to find the trout there, right? If they're known to be there. And they're mostly found in North America and parts of Russia, these special type of trout. And we have different zones that we call them. So the optimum zone, number 1 here, all right, is referring to this middle section right here. Okay, this middle section is talking about the area, the temperatures that we're most likely going to find our trout. Then we have areas of physiological stress, which are the cold and warm ends of that spectrum. Okay, and then we have and these places of physiological stress. These is places where the trout don't want to be for a very long time. So think about yourself for a minute. If you think about yourself, and if you've ever been hiking up in high altitude mountains, you can think about this and think, well, when I'm at a higher altitude, there's less oxygen to breathe. It's harder to live there at 15,000 feet. It's a much more challenging, physiologically stressful place. But if you go down to sea level, you know, it's the air's there's more air to breathe, right? It's more comfortable for you to live. That's why a lot of people live on the coastlines. It wasn't until the 1800s when our ancestors left different parts of the world and came to Utah. We haven't lived here that long, but we live at about 4,000 4,000 feet, right? And that elevation's a little bit harder to live at. It's a high elevation, and there's a lot of things in Utah that make it stressful. Like there's allergies, and people have breathing problems because this is a physiological, stressful place to live. And a lot of people have those symptoms. So like your allergies, if you actually go to a different place, they may actually disappear. When I go to the coast, my asthma goes away, my allergies go away. I actually feel better because we kind of live in a stressful environment, okay? And then you get to places where there's no living organisms like these trout here at the high ends here and the low ends. And we call this the zone of intolerance, but there is what we call an upper and lower limit, okay? All right, so just recognize when you're looking at a range of tolerance chart, okay, pay attention to the curve of the line, and that's representing the number of organisms. And based on the type of environmental factor, it could be temperature, it could be the amount of oxygen that's present based on the elevation. There's all kinds of factors that play into this. But this is just a general representation of graphing out the ideas of factors that influence organisms and their size of their populations, how many there are. Okay? All right. We'll get into the other notes on day 2. This is the end of day 1. Make sure to complete those tasks. And there is an assignment associated with this portion, so follow the learning resources. I believe it's called the Biome Concept Map. So if I scroll down, there's the Biome Concept Map Part 1 and 2. You're going to work on Part 1, and then you'll do Part 2, part of Level 2. So you're going to get started on it. It's working with national parks, so just read the instructions there, and you should be able to find everything you need and complete Part 1 of that assignment. And then you'll finish it up later on another day in Level 2. So, all right, and we'll get to all of this later on other days. But that was the part for today. All right. Okay, thanks for watching.